thank you, Lanny. For those of you who don't know Sun Edison, it basically we started with solar as a service, right? You know, what we started with was that people in general are used to sitting down, moving into a new house, hooking up their utility, not having to pay for their share of the coal plant or the natural gas plant or the nuclear plant that's supporting them, but in fact, just paying every month. And so when you ask somebody to pay for 20 years worth of electricity up front with a solar system, the likely reaction is, well, I'm not used to doing that. So that's where we started. It was pretty fast. I mean, the funny thing is that companies just started signing up, and the hard part was actually getting the financing lined up. After you get the companies to sign up and you sort of tell them a little white lie and tell them that you actually already have the financing lined up, then you got to go and find the financing, and that was tough. But we're where we are today, I think, because a lot of banks stepped up and sort of looked at the asset class. So I'm here to really support the Solar San Antonio organization. For those of you who met me last year when I came, I've got to say what a difference a year makes, right? I mean, I think in the last year, San Antonio's gone from a city that was a big verbal supporter of solar to a city now that's a real supporter of solar through real systems that are on real rooftops and contracts that have been issued and are being built on. I mean, I think there's a 13.8 megawatt system from UE that's going to be commissioned soon, and 41 megawatts worth of solar that's really been put in here, which I think San Antonio now is the #1 solar city in the state of Texas, which I'd love a round of applause for CPS on that. I think that where we are now is where does this go, right? So at 41 megawatts, everybody says, well, that's great, it's a cool, interesting thing, etc. But this thing grows, right? Everything grows. Every year you put in more stuff, and every year it gets a little bit more complicated as to how the revenues flow and how these things work out. And I think that you start to get a diversification of the customer base. You start to get residential customers who actually want to own the systems. They don't want to do a PPA where they're sort of buying power. They want to actually own them, which is great. Well, who's going to offer that to them? Well, I think one of the speakers is going to talk about that. I mean, the next thing you get is, well, that's great, Jigar, that you're able to support Walmart and Costco and Macy's and Whole Foods and Target and all these other fine institutions that have publicly traded debt. But what if I've got Joe's Auto Body Shop or the local grocery store or the dry cleaner that wants to participate in this? How do they get supported? And so there's another group that's going to talk about that and how they support that. And I think what you're seeing now is real excitement, mostly because of the sheer amount of money that's coming into it and the experience base that's out there. So I know that Sun Edison just closed a $1.2 billion financing vehicle for U.S. projects that I think they're going to be announcing next week or so, and then so that's coming up from big banks that are doing their work, and I know that, and then there's others in Europe that have put together $1 billion financing funds. This year alone, you'll probably have about 13 gigawatts worth of solar that gets installed. I think our estimate last year was something like on the order of 7 gigawatts this year, and so I think the solar industry is way outpaced themselves. At 13 gigawatts, you're probably talking at about something on the order of like $30 to $40 billion of financing that occurs globally this year. So that money comes from places. It comes from individuals like myself I've invested in several solar projects because I think they're like real estate, and in fact lower risk than real estate for me. There's others who come from banking, etc. And I think what's important for all of you to recognize is what questions you have to ask yourself. The thing in the real estate business that you learn is real estate is about understanding the ebbs and flows of how things work. This piece of land 5 years from now is going to be worth something, so I'm going to actually work on it. I'm going to get it zoned properly, and I'm going to construct something, and there's some construction financing that I have to do, especially with certain banks, and then I roll that over into a term loan, and then I find a real estate investment trust to buy it, and there's cap rates, and there's all sorts of stuff, right? And you know, you and I think that that stuff's just completely confusing, right? Maybe, but for the guys in the real estate business, they're like, well, that's perfect. We know what that works, etc. But they don't know that in solar, right? Nobody knows what the cap rate is for solar. Nobody knows what the zoning rules are for solar. There's some sort of building code inspector that's flying around who basically is telling people that they need a 5-hour inspection instead of a 1-hour inspection. There's a person in the planning department who doesn't know what a solar, you know, set of blueprints look like, and so they take an extra 4 days to approve the project, and so all of that stuff takes time, and all of us have to work together to figure that out. But more importantly, we have to identify those steps, which have been identified. There's a great organization called Solar Tech in Palo Alto that's actually doing that work for all the cities across the country now, and have put together a nice pipeline of things. But I think it's important for us, as we enjoy the success of the last year, to figure out that this is going to lead to new challenges next year, right? I mean, people have installed, I think solar systems were at $8 a watt last year. Today, solar systems are at $4.60 a watt or something with one block off grid, and they're probably a little bit more expensive for some of the other folks. And that's fantastic. I mean, it's great to hear that solar has come down that much in just a year. But next year, it's probably going to be $4.20 a watt. And the year after that, it'll be a little less. And CPS, I'm sure, will adjust their rebates accordingly to make sure that the net price to the consumer actually, stays roughly the same or comes down, or maybe even goes up each year a little bit, because our goal is for solar to be something that stands alone, right? So that doesn't need the incentive over time. And as we get bigger and bigger, it's going to be, I think, too much of a burden on the citizens of San Antonio to have to pay for all those incentives. So the interesting thing is how this goes down. And what I would say to you is that finance is what happens after all those things are solved, right? So you bring all these financing people to the table, but the finance guys want to know that all that stuff's going to be resolved. They don't want to know that you're going to do a solar system and then you're going to have a 3-week delay that they didn't expect because the building inspector wasn't going to help them with this, or the electrical inspector wasn't going to help them with that. So part of this part of this forum, I hope over time, becomes that yes, financing is available. And you're going to hear from a lot of folks today that actually can talk to you about that. But the reason these guys are excited is because they see a level of standardization in the solar industry that they can actually understand, that they can actually go to their credit committee and their board on and say, we're going to do 50 transactions that look almost exactly like this. And the more repetitive that these become, the more likely it is that we're going to just look at this as old hat, and we're just going to put a few $1 million into this every single year as a financial institution. So my opening remarks, because I don't want to keep you from the real content of the day here, but my opening remarks here is that this is growing. This is going to get really huge. We were all expecting 7 gigawatt market this year. It's going to turn out to be 12 to 13 gigawatts this year globally. So that means that there are people building new manufacturing facilities in the U.S. There's new manufacturing facilities going into Mexico. There's new manufacturing facilities going to Canada and India and other places around the world. That means that solar panel prices are going to keep coming down, because as you get more and more experienced people coming in, those costs are going to come down. What you're going to find is that the financing and the support across the country is going to get more and more robust, from insurance companies to pension funds to others are now starting to see this is a real asset class that they want to invest in. And what that's going to mean is a tremendous effort, city by city, town by town, around the state of Texas as well as around the country, to make this something that's standardized for folks. And so I look forward to partnering with you. I look forward to seeing all of you hopefully tomorrow at the great lunch. And I'll wish a early birthday to Bill Senkin. Thanks.